This is Tom.
That's
Tom is from Chai, and when y'all talked about having interest in learning about how AI is interacting with actual humans, I started deep diving into this, and they've got some super interesting work that they're doing, fascinating platform. I have not downloaded it yet,
sorry.
but I will. I'm sure somebody here has. But he's got some presentations, but I think it's just a lot of questions. So feel free to just pepper him with questions. I think that it's just super interesting what he's doing and where it's going to be taking us very soon. I apologize, there'll be people walking in, but I'm going to record now.
No problem.
And
Cool. All right. Hey guys, my name is Tom. I work at Chai, as I said. So thanks so much for reaching out and schedule the call. And basically, the idea is I'll give a very quick presentation in terms of what we are trying to do, and basically explaining these terms like how we make a platform that's open, democratic, social AI, and then I'll just basically open the floor for questions. Ask me any questions that you want, basically. So the way I picture, how long is the class normally?
the class is till 11:30, but no, I know
Okay,
we
cool,
told
cool.
you till like 10:30.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we have
Yeah,
plenty of time.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you want them to introduce themselves? I mean, it's a small class. I don't know if that's something you want to do, or do you want to do questions?
it's okay. It's
Okay,
okay. Yeah,
all right.
we can always do the
Okay.
introduction later.
Got it.
And so yeah, cool. So just to give you guys some background, like the origin of the company and so on. So it's basically the same group of people. So we all graduated from Cambridge in the UK, and we started a trading firm, actually a quant trading firm, where we basically use AI to predict the outcome of market events. And it's a prop trading firm, so that means we just trade our own money. So we grow our own bankroll from around 250K to around 5 million per year, and then the trading platform sort of became more stable. And we were looking for the next thing to build. And we all just really wanted to make impact to society. And the thing with trading is very much, you're just trading against other systematic groups and so on, and there's not much impact there. And then we just, brainstorm in terms of, well, what are we good at? And what can we do to make an impact? So we knew we were very good at making models, right? Making AI models to do something. That's something that we play around all day. Trading is a very harsh market, very, very competitive. So you really need to have the best AI. So we're like, okay, we knew how to do really, really good AI. We knew about language models. So this is 2.5 years ago when GPT-2 was basically the thing, and everyone was saying how dumb GPT-2 is, how it cannot generalize, and so on. But we knew they're good enough for sentiment analysis that's used in trading and so on. So it's probably going to be good enough as a product. And the other thing is we wanted to make a platform. And I was talking to Alice, which is, again, in trading, you are hurt by the fact that you're not a platform, right? If you think about the trading platforms, they have an easier life versus if you are just a person using the platform. And also a platform is the one that gets you the most exposure, gets you most users, in turn gets you the largest impact. So then with these two things in mind, we wanted to make an AI platform, specifically on language models. We tried loads of ideas. So this is before, people started thinking about AI companionships and so on. That's the trending topic now. We never started thinking, oh yeah, we want to make AI companionship. We just started saying we want to make a social AI platform powered by language models. So then after a couple of idea iterations, we figured out that people love creating characters on the platform and love chatting with characters on the platform. And that whole thing went through lots of iterations because, character creation, as we know now, is just prompt engineering. You just need to, in ChatGPT, you say things like, you are like a world-class essay writer. This is my homework, write the essay for me, and so on, right? But it's the process of finding this out and then simplifying it and package it onto a front-end product so that people can very easily create characters that they like and then chat with them. we released Python packages, and then we quickly realized that no one can be bothered to code, or like it's just not, the bar of entry is way too high. So then we basically simplify into like UI GUIs and so on. And that's when the user base really started taking up, and people are creating loads of characters that we would have never ever created ourselves. You can mention loads of anime characters, actually, like a Netflix show released Wednesday Addams, and straight away you see Wednesday Addams being at the top of the feed, or we call the leaderboard, and so on. And then as a new show released, Wednesday Addams comes down, and then a new character comes up. So currently we serve around 1 billion messages to users to drive around like 4 million monthly active users. So this is a sort of like product from the outside perspective, right? It's an app that you can find characters on the app and chat with them. So then I just want to go into, well, we say we are open democratic social AI platform. So what does that mean for us? So that's the thing that we went into building. And then what does that how does that translate to on the product space? So for those of you who might not know, GPT 3.5, so these are the basically OpenAI language models. They are 175 billion in number of parameters. That's the number of neurons that's driving this AI. GPT-4, no one knows how many parameters it has, probably over that range. So what does it take for you to run this model if you have access to it? And the answer is these are A100 GPUs by NVIDIA. And they cost 16,000 each. You need 4 of them in order to run the model if you had it. And this is prohibitively expensive for developers, for your day-to-day person, for enthusiasts. You cannot currently play around with these models unless you're from a big research group or you're from big tech. On the other hand, we have access issues as well. So who has access? Who can even access, OpenAI's model? What you see the trend currently is lots of big techs are putting their models behind a closed wall. So not only you have this access issue from like, if you had it, you can't really run it unless you spend 64,000. You also have the issue of you flat out do not have access to it, right? So OpenAI has their ChatGPT, no one has access to it. Google has their Palm, Microsoft, well, OpenAI, and they have Amazon Anthropic. They put it behind the API, so you can't even play with it. On the other hand, we have these community-built models that are really high quality. I'll show you guys a chart later. These are 13 billion parameter model. And I do have to give Meta a lot of credit here. They released Llama model, and they've open sourced it. Basically, the license is like, unless you have like 250 monthly active users, you can use it for free. So basically, unless you're any of these companies, you can use it for free. And then someone else released a package called Llama CPP, which enables you to run this 13B model on your high-end MacBook. Still pretty expensive, but you can see it's very, very accessible. And who has access to a 13B model? On Hugging Face, which is the current new GitHub for language models, for AI models, basically, there's over 120,000 models, all open source, people can play around with. So then the question is, well, which direction, which trend do we bet on? So this is like a chart. This chart is a bit out of date because there's like a lot more models happening in the past 2-3 months. Last night just didn't have time to like go and scrape and like update them. But what you see is back in February 2022, so this is just over a year ago, people were very pessimistic about the community-built open-sourced models, where OpenAI released GPT 3.5, and that's the one that sort of like started taking up. Bear in mind, they released the first version of ChatGPT in October, November, around that. And what you see is you have volumes, like the amount of open source models has really been taking up, and the quality has increased significantly. For example, Vicuna 13B is a community trained model that costed $300 just to train this model. whereas GPT 3.5 costs tens of millions. So this, on the upper side, that's the direction that we are backing up. And to that, people think we're a bit crazy. We open source our models, and then we actually open source our data sets as well that we use to train these models. And I'll explain later about the business model, about how does this actually work for us. But yeah, so the idea is we just want to do something that's beneficial for the community. And that's why we just released our models. The other part is who can actually understand a 175B model. So, well, access is an issue. So your normal day-to-day person cannot. So when you talk about AI safety and so on, it's like, well, you can't really talk about it if you haven't really played around with these models, have a deep understanding of them. And some people might say, oh, you need to be an AI expert in it. But really, I know lots of people here have CS degrees and so on. People are, if I give people the weight, they should be able to play around with it and understand it. Let's see. So the question is, if you had access, imagine if you had access to 175B model, how do you build an understanding on it versus if you had access to a 13B model? Understanding a 13B model is pretty hard, but the fact is you have lots of eyes on it. You have the open source community and so on. They can probe into a model, really understanding whether it's safe, not safe, what exactly is good for, and so on. We chuck it behind a paywall where people can't access it. Even if you don't, it's really hard to probe into this huge model that you have to load with your 4 GPUs. Everything is a lot slower. Versus this one, you can just run it on your laptop. You can probe it. You can go deep into the weights, into the neurons, and understand what exactly it's doing. Still a hard task, but much more accessible and much more doable. So this is what we're doing. AI safety is not about moving models behind an API. It's like, oh, let's just make sure no one has access to it other than 100 people or so. And it's not about censorship dictated by experts, like a group of people who said, no, AI cannot say this, AI cannot say that. We just believe in, once you put these models, the 120K models, I'll show you guys this chart. So Hugging Face has got this leaderboard. You see there's a truthful QA thing. You can say, oh, some models are a bit low, and so I'm going to download it, play around with it. I can load this up on my own computer, right? I can just see what's going on. Then you can flag this model for certain issues, right? This community-built filtering is much better than just a group of people saying, oh, I'm going to assess this model specifically because I have access to this large model. I'm just going to understand it and so on, produce a report. And then when people ask, hey, what about this number? What about that number? They're like, no, sorry, you can't have access to the model. I'll just produce an appendix to the report and so on. And on our side, when it comes to banning, censorship, and so on, it's all very just community driven, right? If you find a character on the platform to be harmful and so on, you just report it. And it's that really simple concept, right? It's like if you find something to be harmful, you should just report it, and then we have algorithms that automatically take it down, right? So that's the democratic part. When it comes to social, I want to make a distinction between Chai and a lot of these AI products here. ChatGPT is an AI assistant. That's an AI assistant. Jasper is a copywriter. They're all assistants. So it's like a tool. It's like a calculator, essentially. And for us, the social aspect really just means, what do you experience in your day-to-day life, right? You have fighting, right? So you have arguments with your friends, with your family. Then you have friendship. Then you have romantic relationship. Then you have adventure. And these are the social products when we think about it, right? So these are the platforms out there that people can experience all these mixed emotions. And when you start looking into the data set in terms of, what type of conversations and so on people have with the AI, it's a mix. And this is where the misconception comes. People don't just get stuck into these categories. They sort of move around and go across the categories, across the week. They do not just have a single modality, just like how in your day-to-day, you do not have a single modality. You don't just say, okay, for this week, I'm just going to fight people. That's all I'm going to do. That's not how we behave. And that's not how users on the platform behave. Is really this going through all these mixed emotions, going through all these modalities that makes the product social instead of a tool like an AI assistant. Cool. So then comes to the platform, and I don't really like drawing comparisons with the other products out there, but I think when it comes to platform, this is where it's easier to understand. So take YouTube. What do you have on YouTube? You have content creators like Mr. Beast releasing YouTube videos, releasing to the community. Users, the community, watch them, like them, and in turn, give money to Mr. Beast and YouTube. This is a platform, right? For us, it's slightly more complicated. You have three groups of people. One is users who can also become chat AI creators, character creators. On the app, you can open the app, and if you don't find any characters that you like, you can make one. And that one, if it gains popularity, it would appear on top of other people's feed. So this, very low barrier of entry. Then we have open source developers. I'll talk about the competition in a bit, but these are the community that are well-versed in language model development, and their goal is to develop these more foundational models, right? These large models, these 13B models. Despite what I said earlier, to train a 13B parameter model is still a bit expensive. You do need, let me think, to be fair, it's not that expensive. So you can go to Rampart and so on, rent a GPU. It's only $2-3 per hour, and then you can train a model that you like. And this is the ecosystem that we are in. So sometimes we plug ourselves in as LLM developers when we want to release our model, and then we get the community to help us to develop these models. And then in turn, currently we are paying these developers if their model is really good. And in future, we want to open up full profit sharing so that if users spend more time checking the specific character, that character creator should have monetary benefits. And if a developer's model, which is used by all characters, is good, then they should in turn have monetary benefit. And sorry, I just realized there's one thing I missed, which is on the platform. All characters are driven by a set of language models. So it's not like each character has their own specific language model. Language model is supposed to be general, right? So on OpenAI, you'll find it's one big language model that drives the entire possible types of conversations. Doesn't matter Spanish, Chinese, English, right? It's all driven by that model. We have a way to combine these sets of smaller models and assign them and so on, and then to serve our users. So what does that look like in practice on the platform now? So you have the AI creation. So anyone can just go and type in a bunch of personalities, give it a prompt, give it a description, and you can click on AI. You have chat and discovery page. So this is where users spend most of the time on, right? So you browse for the characters, and then you chat with them. And here it's interesting. Do you see here? It says start a new conversation with an experimental AI model. The users can choose to click it and give consent to sharing their conversation to help out with the developer and the community. And then this is a thing that we've launched since June, which is a LLM competition, where we want to give $1 million to the community to build open sourced language models. And what happens is it's a simple pay package that we've developed. You can test out any models on Hugging Face. You can train your own models, and then we deploy it for you. So we handle all the hosting, all the costs for you. It costs no money for you to submit a model, and we deploy that directly to the users, right? When the user says, yeah, I want to chat with an experimental model, they can then enter this mode, and then they give feedback, right? So developer can read their conversation, thumbs up, thumbs down, and written feedback. And then we rank these developers' models, and we pay the top models. And since we launched, we've had over 1,000 models submitted, and we've paid out $30,000. And this, again, so the last phase winner was this 18-year-old kid from Texas who did not have access to almost any GPUs, basically. Like, he was using gaming graphics card. He was hugely into gaming. And the technique that he used to win the competition was, in lots of AI researchers' mind, very insane, right? Because he cannot train a model, what he did is he picked two models that he liked, and he just randomly merged in the weights. So when I saw that, I thought this model is going to be really degenerative. Like, I thought it was going to output just random garbage tokens. It did not. They actually achieved a very interesting blend of two behaviors. So he had one model that's very descriptive, good at storytelling, novels, and so on. One model that's very mathematical, so had good inference abilities. And the logic there is lots of storytelling models out there are not that smart. So they're like logical inferences. So they could say nonsensical things or contradictory things within a conversation. Whereas the mathematical models are clearly very, very boring, but they are very logical. So then that was his idea. So he said, I'm just going to randomly merge them in together. Normal people would be like, okay, I'm going to train on this data set and that data set. But he's like, I don't have the GPUs, so I'm just going to merge them in. And that's a technique that we're looking closely into now. In fact, we might be collaborating with universities and so on to see whether we can, because with techniques like this, it's like, if it doesn't make sense and it works out of the box, there's a lot of things to dive into there. And again, it's just not, this is our bet, basically, to make models that's safe and accessible for all. This is basically the only way. You do not restrict, you do not set the competition to be like, I want 175B, which means an 18-year-old kid can no longer compete in this field, right? Or you can say, oh, I'm going to collaborate with Cambridge, Stanford, and so on, to the big research groups, where again, people have access to higher GPUs and so on. We just want to make a platform that anyone can sort of enter and contribute, and then in turn get benefit from it. And then if you serve a better model to the users love it, and then users come in. So that's basically it. So then in terms of, people always ask, what's our moat? If you are basically open sourcing your language model, you're open sourcing your data set, right? What exactly is the moat of your business? And for us, there is no moat, except for our users and our developers. If developers like this whole thing, there should be more and more developers coming in. And we should become the platform where people can say, I'm going to test out the model, or I'm going to try to investigate the model. They can just come to the platform and then just pull open source model that we are serving to users, and then understand it or refine it. And then our users, if they serve the best possible blend of small models or really, really good at their own thing, they should be retained on the platform. And it's just this loop that, if we just make something that's good, that users love and developers love, then the platform will exist. Mm-hmm. That's basically it. Yeah, that's all the questions. That's all the presentation. Thank you very much.
Can you, does everyone know what moat is?
No.
Can you,
Moat.
I don't think everyone knows what moat
I see. This is like a VC business
exactly.
basically.
Yes.
Moat is you're in a castle, and then so it's your line of defense, it's your barrier of entry, right? Is when you are trying to pitch a business idea or something to someone, they care about this moat, which is it's your barrier of entry. So for example, OpenAI's moat will be this. What will be my first slide? OpenAI's moat will literally, they'll say, look, even if you had our weights, you can't really do much with it. And we close source our weights. Here we go. That's a moat. And then for us, it's like, we don't think there is such a thing. We just want to make a better product.
Questions? Caroline?
So in all of like the graphics of the AI things you can chat with, it looks like they're all like Illustrator or something. Is it intentional to not make them like images of like human faces?
Oh, that's interesting. No. So they're all user submitted.
Okay.
They're all user submitted graphics, and that's another thing, which is when we made the platform initially, we really didn't know what characters people are going to create. And then now it's clear that people love creating anime TV show characters, which is quite nice. You know, you do want to. It's nice to have a platform where the demographic is slightly younger, so then you can sort of grow with the demographic. Yeah. So the majority of the users, the density is between 18 and 25. That's the density, which again makes sense. Whenever you have these sort of like newer technologies and so on, it's always the younger demographic that tries them out. You can't expect someone who's like over 50 years old be like, oh yeah, I'm going to test out chat with AI sort of thing, you know.
Were you expecting like a different direction that users would take, or were you expecting this kind of like character driven, especially with like video games or like anime, like sort of like demographic?
So were we expecting it?
Mhm.
It's hard to say because, you know, when you open up, initially it was clear it was more therapeutic, if it makes sense. So it really evolves with the AI. So when we first released the platform, the AI is a lot less intelligent. What that means is then we tried to ask more questions. So it's a very good listener. It just asks you questions after question. It doesn't really help you to understand anything. It just asks you questions. So then you see a bunch of therapy characters on there. And then when the AI gets a bit smarter, that's when you start seeing more anime, because now to do character is actually quite hard for a model. It needs to, right? So let's say if a language model has never seen Wednesday Addams, then it's basically clueless. It really relies on the tiny bit of user prompt input, and users hate typing. You know, I think no one likes typing, filling out a long form. That's why we spend a lot of time in. That's why you see like a personality page earlier, which is we just want the model to follow these personality traits and so on. As the model gets slightly smarter, we had that. And then there's an interesting one, which I was talking to Alice about, which is when 3.5 came out, I'm pretty sure we're one of the first to really test out at scale, because we're like, that model is a very expensive model. We don't have access to the weights, obviously, but we're like, it's a much smarter model. Let's just try it out. Let's see what is it actually good for. Can we break out of anime currently? And then we tried specifically language learning and so on, a bunch of language learning, but we actually failed at that. But then Duolingo used the same technology and exceeded. That's more of a product lesson there. I still need to really review on exactly what Duolingo did to make that succeed. But with all of these, you have iterations and so on. But what's clear for us is like the behavior of the fundamental AI model itself can drive large changes on the type of conversations that, or the type of characters that exist on the platform.
How does moderation work? So, like, is there anything that users can or can't do? Essentially, like, what if a person wanted to like bully their AI?
Cool. Okay. So this is quite cool. So we're a social AI platform, and I really want to emphasize on the social part, right? So imagine you're playing GTA 5, right? There's no one saying you cannot kick a non-playable character, whatever, right? There's no one dictating it. And that goes back into the democratic part, right? Which is we want consensus, community-based consensus. People were flagging this character a lot, saying, well, this character is just a pure bully character. We hate bullying, da, 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 da. Then, right, the algorithm and so on will pick it up, and then our moderators will pick it up and filter that. But then to say, what if people bully AI? And I think AI should not be bullied or something. That's a very, right, like it's like a few countries saying to its citizens, right, this is the mode that you should be behaving, this is the mode you should not be, you know, and that's not what we want to be, right? We want to be a democratic social AI platform. So then all range of emotions, it's all good. Obviously, there are like certain, and then when consensus came in, there's certain words that AI absolutely must not say. There's certain modes of engagement that AI should never, ever engage in. And that's, you know, everyone knows what they are, and then we explicitly would ban these types of engagements.
Do you know how much time people on average are spending on the platform, or is that something you don't track?
We do. This is like suck my job if I didn't track it. 1 hour a day And that is, so if you are active on the platform, the average time is 1 hour a day. And that's actually not dictated because that's actually semi-dictated by us because we have a message limit. If you are, so the business model is freemium. So if you go on the app today, what you see is you might be hit with ads, you'll be hit with message limits. And we have 70 messages per day.
70?
70.
70.
And it takes an hour to send 70 messages. It takes just about an hour. If we double that, you see on average 2 hours. Basically, if a user is active on the platform, they will spend all their message limits. And around 70 is 1 hour of engagement.
Why do you have the message limit?
For cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you envision like content creators like interacting with your platform?
Content creators interacting.
With your platform, like on YouTube or like on TikTok or something.
Cool, yeah. There is literally Mr. Beast character on there and so on, and Mr. Beast didn't create it, and maybe one day, maybe I shouldn't say this, lawsuit or something, but there's no AI currently is still not there yet. I think it cannot fully recreate a persona and so on. Sorry, that statement is actually incorrect. It cannot do that out of the box, right? Even if you fed, everyone says GPT-4 is the smartest model, you can prompt GPT-4 with a lot of conversation and so on. It cannot really recreate you. What you can do is you can fine-tune the model specifically on a character, right? Let's say if I just decided to open source all of my Facebook message history, WhatsApp message history, and so on, that data set. If you tune a model directly on that, chances are it can actually recreate you. But again, that's why we open source on the competition side. I think let's imagine Mr. Beast for some reason it's like I'm sick of typing to my fans and so on. My fans want to chat with me and so on. I'm just going to create a Mr. Beast bot, and then we'll be like, well, okay, we can crawl through all your data set and then try to recreate one, or the community can do one if he's happy to release. To be fair, he doesn't need to release his private chats, right? He just needs to. All his YouTubes are there, so you just script the transcript and then you can create a Mr. Beast bot. That's how we see it happening in future. But it requires a community of developers because we cannot just say, hey, thank you, we'll create a custom model just for you and so on. That's not sustainable. We just want to, once the cost of training models has been really going down exponentially, and the number of enthusiasts and developers has really been increasing. And what we are going to see is a lot of techniques that they use to train high quality models. We can do the exact same thing in terms of how we abstracted the character creation part. We can abstract all that knowledge into a simple UI. Currently, there are, Hugging Face would offer drag and drop and train a model and so on. But the thing is, they're not that high quality, right? And then people, a drag and drop interface is not. Yes, it's the simplest possible UI you can think of, but if people don't get what they want out of it, they're not going to be using it. So that's why, with the community's help and so on, they're going to help us to abstract knowledge, and then we're going to make it more accessible on the front end, once we know exactly what we need to be building.
How good is the AI at remembering conversations with specific people? I'm guessing lots of people probably use like the same characters like day after day.
Yeah.
Is the AI able to remember those specific conversations with a single person?
No, so that's an interesting one, which is on a technical level, it's called context window, right? It's like how much can AI be looking back at a time. We experiment a lot with this context window. What we find is, yes, the smarter the AI, it benefits from longer context window, but it really doesn't matter. I think it's a huge diminishing return. And then once you start looking at the conversations and so on, you start to understand it's like people come to the platform when they chat with Wednesday Addams, let's say, they don't really care about Wednesday Addams knowing, say, my name is Tom, because they are playing a different character in the TV show. Right? It's not essential for them to know what I like or dislike. It's very important for the model, for that character to know about the TV show itself, if that makes sense. So that's the current, again, that's a current modality that people are into, which now it goes into this adventure sort of thing, right? People should know Marvel's universe and so on. And then,
So with the like Mr. Beast bot example, like, are people like okay with like a model of themselves being created, and like, do you ever like notify someone like, oh, you exist now on our platform and people can talk to you if it's not you? Like,
we have around more than 5 million characters
okay.
and 10 developers. Currently, if people are not happy with their characters on the platform and so on, we can take it down. That's not a problem. But then it's a bit similar to YouTube, right? I think you can upload almost anything onto YouTube. They can choose to demonetize you or take the video down and so on. That's more of the approach that we'll be going to. You know, again, we really don't like censorship. In a sense, we really don't like the ideas like no one from now on can, you know, create a Mr. Beast bot and so on. Yeah.
I was wondering like how you guys would regulate and mitigate the risk of like AI, especially when it comes to like mental health in this platform. Like I'm like on the darker side, I'm currently on this like article, and it says that this like man from like Belgium like recently took his own life after chatting with this like AI chatbot. Her name is Eliza. And so I was just like wondering how you guys like mitigate and like regulate all of that.
Cool.
when it comes
This
to
is
platform.
This is a very, very good question. I'm actually very glad you asked this one. So, for the article is like, I do have to say, the original article itself was taken down, and we're not really contacted by authorities to resolve this issue. And then again, like I said, there are certain modalities of the AI model must never engage in. And on the day, we implemented what we call suicide prevention model. When certain modalities has been found, then a much more safe model would kick in and respond to it. So again, it's like, you know, it's just really putting these sort of like bottom line AI safety at the highest level. And then also at the same time, bearing in mind it's a social AI platform. And that's the sort of responsibility you take on, because it's easier to tackle if it's just a coding assistant, if it's just a co-pilot, if all it does is giving you write essays for you, a copywriter, you have less social responsibilities there. But then when you say, you know, this is a social platform, you're going to see all edge cases, all social edge cases existing on the platform. And then it's about really focusing on, you know, eliminating these edge cases. Yeah, so then, for example, self-harm prevention, that absolutely needs to be implemented, you know, to just prevent people. Yeah, and then there's some other, you know, edge cases that we're just like really trying to tackle. Again, at the same time, it's like, it's also why, you know, I'm really trying hard to hire people, hire moderators, and so on, because certain edge cases are actually very hard to identify. That makes sense.
So with edge cases like that, is it like you can't create a solution to it until it's already happened? So like it's kind of just like as the problem occurs, you can fix it.
Yeah, so this is with when you have loads of messages on the platform, when you start looking into the problem with edge cases is it appears at 0.001% of the time. And you cannot be possibly reviewing through all the messages and so on. Again, this is why we really favor the community flagging approach as opposed to moderator reading everything approach. We do flag the conversations, and is this a sort of community filtering plus AI filtering collaborative thing, right? So we have a really good sort of like content moderation model that sort of like goes into conversation, assess, you know, to certain criteria. And that can sort of like get you, you know, it would have a massive, I don't know whether it's false positive or false negative, but basically it would like misflag a lot of content. And that would be 1 million a day, basically. That would be like 500K a day, because if you really care about the edge cases. But then you have the community-based filtering coming in. Then you can drill down on these specific troublesome issues, right? So when the sort of like AI algorithm agrees with the community filtering, and then you go for human moderations, and that's a more sustainable way. So you don't have to, I think it's not responsible to say, oh, I'm just gonna wait until something
Right,
happens
just
and then I'm
like
gonna
someone
fix
died
it.
and then you fix it.
Exactly. It's more like let's catch it early. Yeah.
How do you, like on the same note, how do you, is there a certain pattern, like, is your system now like learning that certain types, more often certain types of conversations are being flagged? And do you have examples of like conversations that seem to be flagged more often?
Yes.
than others?
Yeah. It's a continuous update system. Now, there's no such a thing as online learning, if that makes sense. It's not like because the company is not at that scale yet. A lot of, let's say, transaction fraud labeling companies will do the thing where they update their model nightly and so on, right? But then as more things gets flagged, I'll give you an example, right? So there are certain words, right? So let's take the word now. We're fine with the word NSFW, right? But let's take the word. So for example, when you go into the safe mode of the chat, you don't want to see NSFW. And people are gonna try this, right? The moment you ban NSFW, you're gonna say and tilde SFW or like N, right? And these are actually very hard for AI models to catch. Very, very difficult. So then what you can do is the moment you identify them, the moment they are flagged, they automatically add it into a regex list. So you know this set of characters is definitely bad and so on. So you can update there. That's a very simple process. It doesn't require AI model update and so on. Once you have gathered enough data set there, then you can retrain your model. So then it can be updated there. So is this this is more technical basically. So is this like regex level? So just like scripting level and ML.
I was just wondering like how your app is like different from other like competitors, like Replica. They also seem like you just like hop on and like talk to like your AI friends. So like how do you like differentiate from like other platforms?
This
Oh,
right. I think
yeah.
this is why, you know. Yeah, like I think this whole thing is why like we're here, right? How do you like what's Replica's model? I don't know. Like I think I don't know what drives Replica's model. And sorry, people say we are closer to Replica. That's actually not true. Carrot AI is from a user-facing perspective. Carrot AI is more similar. On Carrot AI, you get to browse for different models and browse for different characters and so on. On Carrot AI is your AI best friend. From us, this AI best friend, this AI companionship, this thing specifically, it's not really a business for us. It's like I don't have one best friend that I just always talk to every single day. You know, like I'm currently talking to all you guys. I'm gonna go back to work. I'm talking to a bunch of other people. It's a social interaction that I enjoy with other characters, right? And by just singling out a specific character, A, it's not a good business model. B, I don't think it's specifically too helpful for a person. You know, it should be just a range of characters. It should be fun, right? It should be entertaining, other than having this specific attachment with one specific character, if that makes sense. That's why our feed updates every single day and so on. Then when it comes to, say with Carrot AI, we're trying to build a platform. What that means is we want to bring in developers. We want to serve smaller models that's accessible to everyone. So everyone can look into them, like exactly what is happening with these models. How can I improve them? What's issues with them? Understand strength and weakness of each models and then make suggestions. Or if they want, under the competition, which in future will become some form of profit sharing and so on, and then just make the platform better, safer in whatever way. Right?
So you talked about on one of the slides like what AI safety isn't. So then how would you define what AI safety is? And is there an element of like education for people using this to like understand what they
that's interesting. So that's another thing, which is there's two things when people talk about AI safety, there's two things people have in their mind. One, which is it going to control the world, right? One is like we're talking about this, artificial general intelligence, right? The super intelligence. The other one is it going to be harmful? Is the current technology going to be harmful to people, right? So then talking about the first one, again, this is why we're going for this smaller ensemble of smaller models that's open to people, right? Because if you're concerned about AI taking over the world and so on, well, is your approach to just like shove it into a black box, have a huge model that only 10 people have access to and shove it into a black box? That's clearly just not the way to do it, right? Or do you want to, let's have 1,000 individual models that absolutely cannot, right? You cannot picture a 13 billion parameter model to be, suddenly super intelligent. They're all good at very specific things. So say this model is very good at math, this model is very good at da. You sort of chain them together. Currently, the way we chain them together, we don't open source it. We actually do planning on open source it and so on. That's how Twitter open sourced their algorithm. If that makes sense. It's so once people just have all this information, it's like imagine it's a hard task still, but at least now you have more eyes on it because everyone can now play around with these individual nodes, right? So imagine if I were to open source, I say this is just Pi model. You have this system that orchestrates between these 500 smaller models. It's a complex system, but if you're like, this model is absolutely toxic, this model, it's not aligned to human wishes, cool, you take it out, right? You don't need to retrain this gigantic model in a black box. You just simply take the model out, or you tell the algorithm to stop recommending to that. And then you can now analyze this model, understand what's going on with it. And then you can maybe update the other models. Right? So that's one part. And the other part, which is what mode of conversation should AI engage or not engage in, and so on. And that for us is just community-based censorship, right? So if the community report about hugely, right, that gets taken off. If someone reports a conversation, right, a specific type of conversation and so on, usually, then we can look at, okay, is this at the word level? If it's at the word level, a certain word is flagged really frequently, then we take it off, right? And then let's say if people are complaining about, let's say the F word, right? It was like, well, I want the model to say F word. So for example, we don't censor for that word because we're like, that's a lot of people's common day-to-day language and so on. So that's our approach, basically. It's like, people are sensible human beings. That makes sense, right? If you just ensemble a group of opinions together, they're going to reach a consensus in terms of what is absolutely terrible, what is a bit bad but acceptable, yeah, that's how we approach the sort of like a model level censorship.
So it relies on like the belief that people are inherently good and not like doing something bad with this, I guess.
Ensemble of people,
Okay.
right? If you put
All
1,000 people together, you're always going to have bad actors.
Okay.
But I think 1,000 people together, I mean, especially for us, like 4 million people together, they should be able to reach a pretty decent consensus.
Would you ever enforce like a hard time or message limit for all users? Like, are you worried about like a potential reverse social consequence where people's like entire like social interaction just occurs on this app or AI and they don't actually spend time outside of that?
I'm going to be really honest with you guys. My mission is to build something users love, and that's it. And I think that's sort of basically the answer, which is I really believe in this social AI platform thing. And I just really want people to really love the product and benefit from the product. Whenever you build something like this, you see reviews saying it's really, we've literally had reviews that say it's changed my life. Now I can talk to more people, I'm more confident, right? And then we have people who said, oh, I literally logged 20 hours today on this thing and so on. Like maybe I should actually start doing my homework or whatever. You have all these sort of reviews. But at the end of the day, this is my belief, at least, which is if I build something people love and people can extract benefit from this, then it's overall good. That's just my belief.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah, sure.
So in casinos have a lot of similar interactions, right? Like they build something that people love. And I was just curious if you have any understanding, or if you're trying to get an understanding of how your platform plays into addiction issues.
Plays into
addiction
issues.
So we're talking about a small group of people, right? It's not like someone not doing it.
Yes.
But really like people. Either it triggers other addictions or it is an addiction by itself.
Yes, cool. Again, I just don't think it's I think Chai versus casino is it's a bit weird because it's like with casino, it's like you're fundamentally playing into a negative expected value game there, right? And then here it's like people can extract benefit from it. It's like, let's say if people, and also currently the models allow for multilingual chats, and you do see people sort of like chatting with the AI in one language, another. It's a platform where, people can, we want to provide people these characters and these tools, basically, to do good things to it. Again, I just want to focus, it's a social platform, right? You're going to see all sorts of modality. It's not up to us to dictate what that specific modality is. Because the moment you do that, you say, I'm going to censor this mode, I'm going to censor that mode, I'm going to place a hard time on it. Now you're playing the governance of this social platform, right? And YouTube doesn't really do it. YouTube does some more community censorship stuff. Google, all these companies, right? People get very upset when we say we have a specific panel group of experts saying this is what's healthy, this is not what's healthy. When I was a kid, I would play hundreds of thousands of hours on CS:GO, and then I grew out of it. You have some people who do not grow out of it, and that's just how everyone behaves, right? Everyone is different, and it's not for me to say, if Steam set a timer on it, right? I can only play CS:GO for 100 hours and so on. I mean, I don't regret logging so many hours on CS:GO now looking back. Some people might, right? But it's not up for me to say, you should not be logging that many hours on CS:GO because I think this is terrible for you. That's not my role. It makes sense. I provide lots of tools for people to, entertain, right? It's an entertaining social platform. And then I really think it's up to the individuals to sort of say, how do I want to spend my time? Also, how do I want to prioritize? That makes sense. Yeah.
So I understand you're an optimistic guy, but is there anything that you're afraid of, or like what makes you nervous about this in the future?
What makes me nervous? I guess I'm an optimistic guy.
It seems that way.
I really think it's the approach where people take and so on. For me, it's like, that's why I'm here today, which is I really believe in open sourcing is the way to go. I've not seen closed sourcing solutions really benefiting people. So that's basically it. So maybe one day we might be in a position, because OpenAI started with open sourcing, right? So then that makes me a bit nervous, because who's going to say in like 20 years time, you'll be like, Tom, hypocrite, standing there just saying we're going to open source everything and then everything's closed source and so on. That makes me a bit nervous. I can't really project that far into the future, but it's just in my opinion, with open sourcing, you identify problems easier. You have more people watching the problem. It's the way to go.
Kind of giving AI the benefit of the doubt. I'm wondering, do you see this as like purely social, or do you also see this AI kind of being trained to give, I don't know, like legal advice or medical advice, or would that be purely up to the users if they want to like train a chatbot to kind of perform these kinds of functions?
It's up for the users, up for the developers,
Okay.
basically. Currently, I can guarantee you, if you were to train a model that just gives tax advice, no one on the platform will be using it. That's almost for sure. If you train a model on fandom, right? So on cool novels or like game dialogues, I think people would love that. And I think that's the cool thing, right? You have this ecosystem going on there where we sort of like sit back and then just let the developers, users interact with each other, and then they're going to create, I doubt they'll create a tax advice bot, but we'll see, basically.
Are you working on any projects where there could be like, you could interact with like a group chat of AIs, so that like kind of like the small bill that we like heard from the previous speaker, where like you could enter a group chat of like multiple AIs and talk to all of them at once, or like sort of interact with like a group chat of friends.
That's cool. We should be making it. Which group of speaker was that?
It was
that he's at Stanford doing generative agents.
Okay, cool. I understand. That is a good idea, actually. Like engineering wise, it takes longer to implement.
Yeah.
If you want to help us to implement.
just thinking about a few slides ago, you talked about how you were thinking about incentivizing each of the different actors. So is that basically how you see it in the future, that the platform would be sustained through each of these people potentially monetizing in that way? Like that's how you would.
Currently, we users enter beta mode, they
Right.
give feedback to these models.
Right.
We use these metrics and you can literally
Yeah.
go thumbs up, thumbs down. That's a
Right.
simple metric. We rank these models and we pay the top guy. Like I think on current phase, we pay the top person 10,000, then 5,000, 2,000, then we do uniform paying across. So everyone sort of like get some money and get some hype into developing for users. In the long run, it's going to be very clear. This is going to be
So at some point, it would be like a paid subscription model.
there's no need.
Well, but then how do you but it's just the usage that drives the payout to.
Yes, so think of YouTube, right?
Yeah.
As in
Ads
exactly.
okay.
So you don't pay to watch Mr. Beast's videos, right? But YouTube does make a lot of money from Mr. Beast being on the platform, right? And then in turn, they're happy to pay the Beast out. That's the way we see it,
Right.
And then people love Mr. Beast videos, right?
Right.
And then that's the way we see it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? We're hitting 10:30. That's what we promised. Comments for Tom? Yes.
I had one more question. I was curious about languages. What is your thought about that? So we were talking English, now I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, that's the cool thing about these language models. They're very good at languages.
Yeah.
So, I should say that sentence.
Yeah.
If you chat with a model in English, it responds in English.
Yeah.
In Spanish, it does the same thing.
Yeah.
I've tried the Chinese thing. Doesn't really speak Chinese that well. And in fact, the Vietnamese group, we have lots of really good Vietnamese competitors currently, and they are their big project. This is their side project. Their big project is making a really good Vietnamese chatbot. Because currently, you can imagine these models are trained on the internet, and certain languages are heavily underrepresented.
Yeah.
And again, that's why we think this whole platform thing is so cool. If you think your language is underrepresented, submit to the platform. We'll route this model to people who speak this language, and then
So how much data do you need? So I've been very curious about some languages. There are some languages that are very underrepresented, that are very different from English, so they're really hard to train for. For example, there's a number of smaller languages in Africa and like Asia. There's like a lot of people, or even in Eastern Europe, where languages are going extinct. So there's like only a few thousand people left to speak it. How much data do you need to train something like that?
Not much. It depends on what is to train mean. If you take a pre-trained model, this model has already, and let's take a powerful one, let's take a really good 13B model, let's take Llama 13B model, for example. It's been trained on the world languages, right? The language you're talking about may be absent in the data set but the thing is, it knows all the other. So it's like you having learned 100 languages, being asked to learn a new language, you can interpolate. So what that means is in your data set, it needs to see all the common vocab once. It needs to see loads of example conversations and so on. I reckon less than 100,000 rows of data, you can do it to a very, very high quality.
Right. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much.
Brings a whole new reality. Let's take a break, everybody. I'm going to pause.